Life. Somehow, he still clung to life. Nobundo emerged from the black pit of unconsciousness, only to find himself trapped in a choking, sightless confinement. His breath came in ragged, shuddering gasps, yet he still lived. He had no idea how much time had passed since the wall fell, since he reached out with his mind. Surely in the turmoil of battle, he had simply failed to concentrate hard enough to reach the light. But now he could make contact. Now surely he could. Nothing. There was no response. Nobundo had never felt so hopelessly lost and utterly alone. If the light was out of reach and he died here, what would become of his spirit? Would the light not receive him? Would his essence be condemned to an eternity of drifting through the void? He had lived his life honorably, yet could this be some kind of punishment? Even as his mind reached for answers, his hands reached out and immediately brushed against cold stone. He slowly became aware that he was lying in a very awkward position, that some softer but still formidable mass was packed tightly next to him, and that his left leg was most certainly broken. He rolled to his right and took in a deep breath, trying to ignore the pain in his ribs and leg. Without recourse to the light, he could not heal himself, and so he would just have to live with the pain for now. At least the feeling had returned to his left side, and he could hear the muffled noises caused by his movements, so his hearing had returned as well. The fact that he was breathing meant that air was reaching him from somewhere. As his eyes continued to adjust, he spotted a pinhole, not of light, but simply a lighter shade of darkness than which surrounded him. He reached out further, and his hand landed on a familiar cylindrical object, the shaft of his hammer. With what little strength he possessed, Nobundo gripped the handle just under the head, lifted and thrust in the direction of the pinhole. Chunks of masonry gave way, vaguely revealing a cramped passage created by the massive stone blocks and the angles at which they had fallen. His ears were immediately greeted with the sound of muted screams, wails of pure terror issuing from some distance away. He used the hammer to pull his upper torso through the hole he created and into the tight space. As he did, he heard a deep moaning sound from the depths of the rubble behind him. With a burst of strength, he pulled himself the rest of the way into the passage, stifling the urge to cry out as his broken leg raked across the jagged stone threshold and sent lances of pain throughout his body. The labored moans continued. The stones around him shifted, and sand and dirt filtered down through the cracks. Quickly, he dragged himself toward an irregular shaped egress, where he spied the faintest hint of light. Judging by the increased moans of the thing in the rubble, Nobundo guessed it was an ogre, and was trying desperately to dislodge itself. Nobundo rolled onto his back and crab-walked with his elbows out into the night air, while the ogre made another determined effort. Nobundo could see the full mount of the debris now. The ogre bellowed in rage one final time, and the entire mass collapsed fully, sending a cloud of dust in all directions and cutting the outburst short. Another cry immediately followed, however, from some distance away and above, the sound of a terrified female. Nobundo turned and was greeted by a sight he would never forget, no matter how hard he tried from that day on. The entire expanse of Lower City, lit by the moon and ambient firelight from above, had become a dumping ground for the bodies of the butchered Draenei. And though the rain had stopped, the corpse mounds were still slick with vomit and blood and every manner of waste. Nobundo's heart withered at the sight of children amongst the dead. Despite their youth, many of them had bravely volunteered to stay with their parents, who knew all too well that the orcs would be suspicious of a Draenei city where no children dwelled, and would hunt the last of their kind to extinction. Still, a part of Nobundo hoped and prayed with all his might that the remaining children could be defended, that they would stay safe in the hiding places that had hastily been dug into the mountains. A foolish hope, he understood, but one he clung to nonetheless. Could anything be more senseless than killing children? Again, his ears were assaulted by the screams of a female, accompanied by taunts and jeers. The orcs were celebrating. reveling in their victory. Looking up, he pinpointed the source of the noise. High above, jutting out from the cliffs of the barrier hills, the Draenei had built outdoor rise. There, the orcs were torturing some poor female Draenei. I must try to stop them, but how? Alone, with a broken leg, one against hundreds, one who had been abandoned by the light, armed only with his hammer. How could he stop the madness unfolding above? I must find a way. Frantically, he crawled over the corpses, slipping in the fluids, shutting the putrid stench and raw of his cat out of his mind. He worked his way around the outer circle of Lower City, towards the base of the cliffs, where the wall met the mountain. He would find a way to climb up there. He would. The screaming stopped. He looked up to see a shadow silhouetted by moonlight. They carried a still form to the edge of the overlook, and then swung, tossing the lifeless cargo down into the depths. It landed with a dull thud, not far from where Nobundo lay motionless. He crept forward, looking for any signs of life from the female. Shaka, he determined her name to be, when he drew close enough to see her features. He had seen her many times before, though they had only spoken on brief occasions. He had always found her pleasant and engaging. Now she lay battered and bruised, her throat cut, her lifeblood drained. At least for her, the pain was over. Another scream issued from above, the voice of another female. Rage welled within Nobundo, rage and frustration, and an overwhelming desire for vengeance. There is nothing you can do. Desperately, he gripped the hammer tightly and tried once again to call upon the light with its assistance. Maybe he could do something, anything. But once again, his only answer was silence. Something within him urged him to get out as quickly as he could, to seek out the others in hiding, to live, to one day fulfill some greater purpose. That is cowardice. I must find a way. I must. But deep inside, Nobundo knew that this battle was over. If indeed some greater destiny awaited him, he must leave immediately. He would only die a meaningless death if he tried to make his way to the rise. Cries of anguish once more pierced the night air. Nobundo looked over to a section of the outer wall that lay partially ruined. It was a perilous obstacle, but not insurmountable, and it was not guarded. The time is now. You must make your choice. It was a chance to live and to someday make a difference once again. You must make it through this. You must go on. That long wail sounded again, but this time was cut mercifully short. Then the sound of orcish voices just around the bend of the inner wall drifted to him. It sounded as if they were rooting through the corpses, looking for something or someone. His time had run out. Nobundo took up his hammer, though it cost considerable time and effort, and set what little strength he had left. He made it over the remaining bodies and through the gap in the wall as he shambled slowly, painfully into Tadakar Forest. Female screams atop Elder Rise began anew. Surely your survival is a sign, a message from the light. It blesses each of us in its own way. When the time comes, you will find it again. I hope that is true, old friend. I do not feel the same. Something within me has changed. Nonsense. You are tired and confused, and after all you've been through, you cannot be faulted for either. Get some rest. Ralk exited the cave. Nobundo lay back and closed his eyes. Cries, the frantic pleas of the females. Nobundo's eyes snapped open. He had been here for several days now, in one of the few camps occupied by those who had gone into hiding before the battle. Yet, he could not escape the heart-rending screams of the women he had left to die. They called out to him every time he closed his eyes, imploring him to help them, to save them. You had no choice. But was that really the truth of it? He was not so sure. Recently, Nobundo found it increasingly difficult to think clearly. His thoughts were muddy, disjointed. He sighed heavily and got up from his blanket on the stone floor, groaning as his sore joints protested. He stepped out into the misty marshlands air and worked his way through a sudden reed bed. Zangarmarsh was an inhospitable territory. Before the time being at least, it was home. The wetlands had always been largely avoided by the orcs, and for good reason. The entire region was covered with shallow brackish water. Many of the flora and fauna were poisonous if not properly prepared, and many of the larger wetland creatures would eat anything that did not eat them first. As Nobundo navigated several towering giant mushrooms, he heard raised voices, a commotion near the edge of the camp. He hurried to see what was happening. 3 battered Draenei, 2 male and 1 female, were being assisted by camp members past the perimeter guards. Another, unconscious, was carried behind them. Nobundo shot a questioning glance to one of the guards, who responded to the unspoken inquiry. "Survivors from Shefrev." Galvanized, Nobundo followed the party back to the caves, where the survivors were carefully laid down on blankets. Rauk laid his hands on the unconscious one first, but was unable to awaken him. The female, seemingly in a daze, was muttering, "Where are we? What has happened? I do not feel... something is..." Rauk came and shushed her. "Just relax. You're among friends now. Everything's going to be fine." Nobundo wondered. Would everything be fine? Orcish hunting parties had already discovered one camp and wiped it out. And these 4, how had they survived? What horrors had the female witnessed? What had driven the unconscious one to this catatonic state? Even more, the way they looked and behaved. Nobundo wondered if their injuries went beyond the physical. They appeared drained, dispirited. They looked the way he felt. Several days later, the survivors had recovered sufficiently for Nobundo to feel comfortable asking them about Shefrev. The female, Corin, spoke first. Her voice broke as she recounted the experience. "We were lucky. We stayed deep in the mountain, in one of the few hiding places that remained undiscovered. At least for the most part." Nobundo looked puzzled. "At one point, a band of the green-skinned monsters found us. The battle that followed was... I have never seen such things. 4 of the men who had volunteered to defend our group were slaughtered, but they killed many of the orcs as well. Finally, only Herrick and Estes were left. They killed the brutal creatures that remained. They were savage beasts, and those eyes, those terrible eyes." Corin shuddered at the memory. Estes spoke. There was an explosion. Moments later, a putrid gas filtered into our hiding place, choking us, causing a sickness such as none of us had ever felt before. Nobundo thought of the unnatural red mist and quickly forced the memory away. Herrick broke in. "It felt as if we were dying. Most of us blacked out. When we awoke, it was morning. The upper levels were deserted. We made our way into the barrier hills, and from there journeyed into Nagrand, where we were found many days later." "How many of you were there?" Herrick answered. 20, maybe more. Mostly women, some children. Others trickled in days later, like the one who lies unconscious in the cave. Akama, they said his name is. We were told he caught a larger dose of the gas than any of the other survivors. Rauk is still unsure if he will ever..." Herrick broke off and fell silent. Estes continued. "Later, we split up and sent to different camps throughout Zangarmarsh and Nagrand. A precaution, so that if one of the camps were discovered by the orcs, we would not all be killed." "Were any of you priests or vindicators? Wielders of the light?" All 3 shook their heads. "I cannot speak for Akama, but Estes and I were simple craftsmen, unaccustomed to wielding a weapon of any kind. That was why we were assigned to the caves, to be your last line of defense. Corin asked Nobindo, when you escaped, did any others make it with you? Were there more survivors? We heard the orcs in the lower levels, but we did not want to risk discovery, so we fled. Nobindo thought of the piled bodies in lower city, heard the pleas from all the rise, tried to force the tortured screams from his mind. No, he answered. There were no more that I know of. Seasons passed.